all getting here. Hey everyone, can you hear me okay? Just maybe give me a quick nod. Perfect. So thanks everyone. Appreciate you joining here today for day 13 of the 30-day profit challenge. It's day 14 and we're halfway through almost the profit challenge. So I really want to thank you for being here and celebrate you made it this far. So congratulations. You know, we're 14 days into this. It's been a challenge maybe for some of you to get up in the morning bright and early, grab a coffee and come and sit on your computer for a few minutes. But hopefully it's been really great, really good opportunity for you to get to know some of the content that we were talking about here, but also hopefully it's been some very practical takeaways for you as well. So I really appreciate you being here. And so today what we're going to do is we're going to kind of recap a little bit at the last few days here in the week that we've been going through. We're going to talk about order margin tree. So let's dive right into it. I'll share my screen and then we'll get going. So today what we're going to talk a bit about is just summarizing what we call the total order margin formula. And what the total order margin formula is basically a summation of all of the things that we've been talking about in the order margin tree. Now, a little bit different than when we did with the customer or the product margin tree, sorry. We were able to actually add up all of the different elements and create an actual formula at the end. This one is more a formula based upon the fact that there's the tree of all the different elements, but some of those elements may or may not be applicable to your business. And so what I'm not going to do is actually showcase a summation of them all, but what we will do is we'll kind of recap and go over all of the individual elements just so that you can have a snapshot of kind of all of the different pieces put together. So just to reframe kind of what we were talking about here, we've got our order margin tree. And so again, if you imagine on the left-hand side, you've got this potential order or practice order that we've been using to help with some of the numbers. So you've got your list price here of $120, taking a discount away of $20 to arrive at $100 in product revenue. Then from there, you've got taxes, you've got shipping, and you've got gross revenue. And so how those relate to the order margin tree is you've got your gross sales revenue over here that is sort of thinking as the top line of what the customer pays for the particular order. You've also got so many orders. And then from there, what you've got is on the far right-hand side here is all the different components that make up the order margin tree. So you've got things like your e-commerce platform costs, and we'll recap those. You got your pick, pack, and shipping costs. You know, if you're charging shipping on that $9.95 on the one order side of the equation, pick, pack is on the other side of the equation in terms of all the fees that you would pay. Then you've got payment processing. And so how the payment processing works is, again, it's connected to your orders as well as your gross sales revenue. Then we've got your returns, which would be anything that people decide, you know what, the returns are the new normal now, and they maybe want to return something because it wasn't the right fit or the right size, or maybe just not what they wanted or expected. And then you've got discounts. And we talked a bit about yesterday about discounts and incentives. So with all those things combined, you get your order variable costs that can then be subtracted from your product sales revenue, which is, again, the money that's in your pocket to arrive at what would be your total order margin. So let's kind of go over each of these just again today, just to kind of recap how each of these work. So the first one was the e-commerce platform costs. So, you know, we took a look at an example of a platform that has really three main components. You've got your shopping cart, you've got your shipping and logistics, and then your sales and marketing platform. And so in this case scenario, we're using sort of three commonly used platforms in the e-commerce world of Shopify to be the vendor that supports your shopping cart. We also use ShipStation. And they're basically, think of them as a middleware between all your shipping providers, whether it's Canada Post or FedEx or UPS, and then you've got them connected into your shopping cart with Shopify. Then what you've got is you've got Klaviyo, and Klaviyo is basically, think of this as like an email marketing software, but it does a little bit more than that. What it allows you to do is create different triggers and different emails. It's similar to if you use something like MailChimp, or maybe if you use HubSpot or something like that. It can almost operate as what we would call a mini contact relationship management system, or a CRM. And so you want to have something in place that allows you to communicate with your customers and message them both pre, during, and post the transaction. So what we did is we showcased a few different examples of how those different plans across each of those three vendors work and what the monthly charges would be versus the annual charges. And so these are what we would call fixed costs. They're not necessarily variable with the amount of orders that you do, although there is some variability into them based upon either the feature set that's available, or in some cases, just the volume thresholds in terms of how many orders you're doing or how many transactions that you have in your database. And so what I've provided here is just some mock examples of what a typical scenario looks like for some merchants that I've worked with in the past. Again, this isn't necessarily to dictate what you need to be buying for their plan. I always encourage people to pick the plan that suits your needs today. Don't worry about what you need tomorrow, because a lot of these plans can grow with you. I always focus on picking what you need today to solve whatever sort of pain points or whatever needs you have in your e-commerce business. So that kind of sums up the e-commerce platform for us. The next thing we looked at was shipping margin, and we worked through a few different scenarios where, if you can imagine, if you're charging $9.95 shipping on your orders today as a sort of flat fee, there is still a cost involved to you shipping out the orders and the rate you would pay to Canada Post or FedEx or UPS. And so there is a little bit of margin that can be made on shipping. It's not a lot, but on a per order basis, this scenario looked at roughly $2 or $1.95. So on 4,000 orders, you're getting $7,800 in shipping margin. So then we played through a few different scenarios. If you reduce the shipping costs, what that could look like and how you could increase the margin there. Or if you increase the shipping rate, so what you charge to the customer, and then we finally looked at what the two look like combined. So in this scenario, you're charging $10.95 or 10% more than the $9.95, or you're also reducing your $8 to $7.20. And that's all possible by, we talked a bit about, you could either try to negotiate with your shipping provider, or perhaps looking at a different provider altogether. If you're using Canada Post directly, get in touch with Shopify. This isn't again, sales plug for Shopify. I just really love the platform, but they offer the ability for you to buy shipping rates still through Canada Post, but you're getting them at their bulk buying power, because they have literally hundreds of thousands of merchants that are in Canada that are using Canada Post already. So they're able to offer you a better rate or preferred rate. Similarly, they have preferred rates for, I believe, FedEx and UPS, and if you're in the States, for United States Postal Service. So, there's opportunities there to just, even if you simply negotiated a better rate, could yield you 10% in that particular shipping rate, but also quite a bit significant more shipping margin in your overall business, that then you can use that to either reinvest in your packaging, or perhaps into some advertising, or perhaps just sheer money back in your pocket. So there's some opportunities there of how you could optimize your shipping margin. Then we looked at payment processing, and payment processing is one of those things that, most people are looking to offer the best rates or best options in terms of people paying you for their particular products or services. And so you typically, most people are comfortable using a credit card now online. Back in the early days, it was one of those things where people were a little bit nervous to put down their credit card. But now that it's a lot more common, a lot more secure, and a lot more available for people, we looked at a couple different scenarios of what it would look like if you paid for the processing of credit cards on your e-commerce business. So we looked at two payment types. We looked at sort of the domestic charges of, common cards like Visa, MasterCard, and as well as PayPal. And then what we also looked at is American Express or international cards, whether that's Discover or Diners Club. And so from there, what we looked at is we looked at a few different scenarios of, let's say, the 80-20 rule, where 80% of your volume is going through those domestic cards and PayPal, and then 20% was going through Amex and international. And sort of what the standard rates are typically, and again, using Shopify as an example, they offer 3 different plans that you can use. And in this scenario, what we showed is we showed the rates that you can use through their Shopify payments, which is their payment gateway. Again, a payment gateway is basically the facilitator that takes the payment from the card and then works with the local bank, takes the charge from you as the merchant, and then they work with the card provider, wherever that card is coming from, whether it's your local bank or some Visa or MasterCard, wherever it is. And then from there, it processes the transaction and makes sure that there's enough room on the card, that the card has funds, that the card's valid, that the information that was presented matches the card. And so that payment gateway is one thing that Shopify uses to offer these rates. So you get 2.9% plus 30 cents. Again, the 2.9% is the payment processing rate that's charged on your gross merchandise volume. So again, similar to when we looked at the order margin tree, it's what the customer's paying. And then the 30 cents is on the per transaction fee. And so we looked at a few scenarios of what 2.9 and 30 cents as the street rates look like, versus if you could improve those to 2.7, or even perhaps get them down to 2.4, versus on the Amex side of the equation, if it's at 3.5, getting it to 3.4 or 3.3. And you can see that there starts to add up to be some pretty significant savings. By simply even upping your plan from the basic to the main plan, you're looking at a 7% savings or 7% return back to you in terms of the processing fees. Or if you get all the way to the advanced plan, that's up to 17% that could be optimized there from your payment processing fees. So there's definitely some opportunities there that you can definitely improve on the payment processing charges. Again, they're table stakes. I think it's an assumption that whatever payment processing or payment type, that you're offering your customers, there is a fee or there is a charge involved with it. So you're gonna have to pay something at some point. Next day, we looked at return rates and we looked at return rate optimization. As we talked about, returns are kind of that new normal. They're sort of expected nowadays that people are looking for returns. And so in that scenario, what we talked a bit about is we talked about, well, what is sort of some current e-commerce return rates look like? And some of the studies we looked at showed it as high as 48%. Now, I'm not saying 48% is your return rate. If it's a lot lower, congratulations. I hope it's a lot lower than 48%. But if in the event that it is 48%, that's okay. That's where the benchmark is. If it's higher than that, well, that now gives you something you could shoot for. So long story short, if we use that 48% example, what we tried to do then is kind of figure out, well, how much revenue could be returned back to me, or how much revenue is, I said lost in this example, but it really is returned back to you because potentially that inventory could be resold again at a maybe a reduced price. So what we're looking at here is a 48% return rate on that same 4,000 orders or $1 million in product sales revenue, what that translates to in terms of orders returned and revenue returned. Then we looked at a few scenarios. If you were able to just take that 48% and just reduce it by a little bit, a couple points down to 46%, or even further down to 43% with 5% off, or all the way down to 38% at 10%. Depending again on your business, you may have some more room or less room to work on the return rate. But what this is meant to showcase is the fact that there's some pretty compelling numbers in here. If you're able to get all the way down 10% off of your return rate at that current sort of figure, you're looking at about a 21% orders return rate or 21% revenue recovered back into your pocket. So that's a pretty significant number here in terms of how much opportunity there is if to optimize the return rate. And so we talked about a few ways to optimize that return rate, offering very clear instructions for customers, making your return policy very prominent, even saying, hey, we offer free shipping and free returns, is something, if you're offering free returns for people, make it something that they know it's super easy to deal with you, because that at the end of the day is what's going to make or break the relationship that you have with your customers. And so finally, the last day we looked at incentive margin. We looked at discounts and incentives. And we looked at a few different options here. Now, I kind of titled this as an incentive margin simply because there is margin available to still be made if you're offering discounts and incentives. There's a bit of a misnomer perhaps that if you offer a discount or sales incentive, there's no money to be made. Well, no, there actually is. And what we talked a bit about is we talked about taking away versus adding value. And, and so in the first example, we looked at a $100 order where we were taking away value that the customer is perceiving to be $20. So we took that 120 example that we used in the mock scenario, and we took away $20 as a discount to show that the customer is still perceiving they're getting $20 of value, but it's $20 removed, not necessarily $20 gain. And so when the customer is paying that, they're paying only $114.95, but you're paying $38 on order. So you're still making some margin at $76.95 or 67%. In the buy one, get one scenario, what we did is we said, well, let's keep the product revenue stable at $120, but let's add another product on for $60 or at 50% off perhaps. And so in that scenario, what we're doing there is the customer is perceiving to get a lot more value in that equation, but they're also paying you a bit more as well because they're paying you the full price of that initial product. Plus they're still paying for the shipping and the handling and the taxes. So what ends up happening is even though there's skin in the game for both you and for the customer now, so that you're both paying a little bit more. But as you can see in this scenario, you're actually making more profit in that scenario, maybe a little bit on the margin percentage, but you're actually making more profit in this scenario than you would have had you just started a simple discount. Then we looked at a gift with purchase. And this one was where we took your same product, again, held it constant at 120, but then maybe we added another little trinket or something that we can add on as another little add-on or upsell. And so in that scenario, it's not as much quite perceived value from the customer. They're still paying the same $120 plus their taxes and the shipping. You're maybe paying a little bit less on the cost of goods. So in that sort of scenario, the margin is actually probably the most that you can make here in terms of both what you're paying versus what the customer's paying. And then finally, we looked at a free shipping scenario. So in a lot of cases, a lot of merchants will offer you free shipping if you spend so much. But I encourage you to think about, do you need to always be offering free shipping? Or perhaps do you offer it maybe on their first order? Or maybe you offer it on a special case basis or a limited time offer. There's opportunities there that the customer will still perceive some value. And believe it or not, people are still willing to pay for shipping these days. Amazon Prime, in essence, even though it looks like you're not paying anything for shipping throughout the year, you are still paying for it on an annual basis, whether it's $70, $80, whatever that annual subscription is to Prime these days. I kind of forget because it's just kind of one of those set it, forget it things for me personally. But, when you're using something like Amazon, you're still having to pay for the shipping. You're just paying for it upfront in sort of an annual or monthly subscription basis. So at the end of the day, everyone is still willing and expecting that they have to pay something for shipping at some point. So just be careful about always offering it for free. You might want to consider, again, offering it maybe at certain points of time, but you also want to experiment it probably with all of these different incentives to figure out which one makes most sense for your business. So that's kind of in a nutshell, the order margin tree. I know it's kind of a long, but it kind of, I think, hopefully went through and recapped all of the individual components of the order margin tree that we've talked about over the last several days. Hopefully you find value again in the order margin tree. Now, there is a little bit of a worksheet that I've got cooking up here for you as well that I should be able to wrap up today, and I'll send it out with the recording and the video so that all of these worksheets that we just looked at across sales incentives, across payment processing, across the returns, or across your pick, pack, and ship costs, you can go in and plug in your own numbers for your own business and then use that worksheet as a tool to help figure out, well, where can I add the most margin, or where can I make some revenue recovery back? And so I'll work on that, get that wrapped up today for you and send that out along with the recording. So again, with that kind of takes us through today's session. So I really appreciate you being here again. Thanks you for being here at day 14 of the 30-day profit challenge. I'm really excited for the next week. We're getting into conversion margin. We're going to get a little bit nerdy, a little bit more into the details, a little bit more into the data, but hopefully you'll find some value out of it. And hopefully we can find that this will help increase some more margin in your business as well when we look at the sheer experience of your website. So with that, I ask you again to be present today, connect with others, and go make an impact in someone else's life. Thanks for watching today, and I look forward to seeing you here again tomorrow. I'll stop the share now and take any questions.